Imagine standing at the crossroads between logic and faith, between what can be proven and what can only be felt. What if poetry wasn't just words on paper, but a way to make sense of life itself? What if prayer wasn't just something whispered to the heavens, but a conversation with your own soul? In Poems and Prayers, Matthew McConaughey invites us into a world where art meets belief, where reason meets rhythm, and where living becomes a lyrical act of faith. This isn't a book of poetry for poetry's sake. It's a map of McConaughey's spiritual journey through fame, family, failure, and faith. It's an honest look at what it means to be human in an age of noise, distraction, and doubt. So, let's dive into McConaughey's Poems and Prayers, a soulful continuation of the wisdom that began with Greenlights, and explore what it means to live, love, believe, and stumble beautifully through it all. The book opens with McConaughey's reflection on why he writes. He says, "It's all a poem if the letters in the alphabet are in order." For him, poetry is not just expression, it's revelation. It's how he translates the chaos of life into something meaningful. In a world obsessed with facts and evidence, McConaughey argues that maybe it's time we turn back to faith, belief, and wonder as ways to understand reality. He challenges our current culture, one that values appearances over truth, and reminds us that prayer and poetry can realign our souls. For McConaughey, prayer is more than worship. It's a way of resetting, of catching our breath, and of remembering who we are when the noise of the world becomes too loud. He ends the introduction by saying, "My prayers are my poems, are my prayers." And with that, the journey begins. Chapter 1. Greenlights, INTERMEZZO. McConaughey opens this section like a storyteller looking back at the trail behind him, dusty, beautiful, and full of lessons learned the hard way. Greenlights, INTERMEZZO acts as both a poetic recap and a spiritual checkpoint. Every stanza feels like a snapshot of his life. The moments that broke him, the victories that built him, and the faith that kept him grounded through it all. He begins with the truth that anchors the entire book. We're all going to die, so how are we going to live a life we look forward to looking back at? From that line onward, the rhythm feels like a conversation between the older, wiser McConaughey and the younger man still trying to figure it all out. He talks about fighting, failing, and forgiving, about the moments when fear becomes freedom and pain turns to wisdom. The poem is raw and cinematic, filled with images of him traveling, loving, losing, and learning to see the light in the red lights. One of the most powerful takeaways here is that life is cyclical. You chase your hero until you become him, then realize the hero was always a part of you. It's a poetic reminder that growth never ends. It loops, it evolves, it demands participation. McConaughey's rhythm and repetition echo a truth he's lived. Persistence and surrender coexist. You keep moving forward, but you also learn to trust the timing of your life. Chapter 2. Navigation and LIVIN ditties. In this chapter, McConaughey fuses philosophy with melody. Navigation, he explains, isn't about control, it's about adaptation. Life doesn't come with a map. It comes with a compass, and that compass is your conscience. Through a mix of poems and real-life anecdotes, he shows how rhythm, both in music and in mindset, can transform even the hardest moments into something meaningful. His ditties, or short poetic reflections, are born from spontaneous real-life moments. A roadside encounter, a sudden insight, a song that turns a mundane morning into a revelation. Each one carries a simple yet profound rhythm, like folk wisdom set to a beat. He recalls a day he met a woman selling burritos out of an abandoned bank. What should have been an ordinary moment becomes a metaphor for finding beauty in the unexpected. The chapter's central lesson is clear. When life finds its rhythm, you can dance through its difficulties. McConaughey encourages readers to listen to the cadence of their own days, to recognize the subtle poetry that hides in conversation, in laughter, even in silence. When we find rhythm, he says, we stop fighting the world and start flowing with it. Chapter 3, Time. Here, McConaughey slows the tempo, inviting the reader to think deeply about the one thing we all chase and can never catch: Time. The chapter unfolds as a meditation, part memoir, part prayer, part philosophical essay. He observes how society has become obsessed with efficiency, yet increasingly disconnected from meaning. We're racing against time more than ever, he writes, but the math doesn't add up. Through gentle storytelling, McConaughey contrasts quantity with quality. He admits that he's lived both fast and slow, rich and raw, and that the best moments weren't the longest. They were the ones he truly inhabited. He tells us about learning to saunter through his days instead of sprinting through them, and how slowing down allowed him to actually experience his own life. The chapter's emotional heart lies in his question: would you rather live 60 satisfying years or 90 distracted ones? His answer, and perhaps the book's quiet thesis, is that fulfillment doesn't depend on the length of our days, but the depth of our presence. Time, in McConaughey's world, isn't a countdown, it's a conversation. Chapter 4, Man Up. With Man Up, McConaughey takes on masculinity, not as a battle cry, but as a redefinition. He unpacks what it truly means to be a man in a world that confuses loudness with leadership. Through poems that range from introspective to playful, he calls for a new kind of courage, one rooted in vulnerability, empathy, and accountability. He reflects on moments from his career when fame tested his values, when pride whispered louder than conscience. And yet, each misstep became a mirror. Being a man, he argues, is not about being unbreakable. It's about being honest enough to admit when you are. The man who can cry, confess, and still stand tall. That's the one who truly mans up. He ties it back to faith, too. Humility before God, forgiveness of others, and service to something bigger than yourself. McConaughey's voice here is equal parts preacher and poet, reminding us that real masculinity doesn't flex, it builds. Man Up, he says, isn't about dominance. It's about devotion. Chapter 5, Regulation Gauges. This chapter moves from the philosophical to the practical. McConaughey draws on a metaphor familiar to anyone who's ever tinkered with a soundboard: the regulation gauge. Life, he explains, is an equalizer. Your health, your family, your career, your spirit, they're all dials. And none can stay maxed out forever. He describes seasons in his life when the dials were wildly uneven, when success in Hollywood meant time away from his wife and kids, when family harmony came at the cost of creative drive. The lesson? Balance isn't static, it's a living, breathing calibration. The art of living well lies in listening closely enough to know when you're out of tune. He urges readers to take inventory regularly, to check their emotional gauges, their physical energy, their spiritual pulse. Sometimes you'll need to turn down ambition to turn up connection. Sometimes you'll need to quiet the noise of the world just to hear yourself again. In the end, regulation gauges is less about control and more about awareness. McConaughey reminds us that success only becomes wisdom when it aligns with the heart. He leaves us with a grounded truth. You can have it all, just not all at once. Chapter 6, Love Stories. This chapter is McConaughey at his most tender and human. He opens with a simple idea: love is not something we find, it's something we learn to recognize. Through a collection of poems and reflections, he explores love in all its messy forms: romantic, familial, spiritual, and self-love. Each verse captures a different temperature of affection: the heat of desire, the warmth of commitment, and the chill of loss. He writes of falling in love not as a fairy tale, but as a discipline. Real love, he suggests, demands patience, humor, and humility. There's a poem about reveling in the post, the calm after love's storm, when the quiet becomes sacred and intimacy turns into understanding. McConaughey celebrates those moments after passion, when love matures into gratitude. In his voice, love becomes prayer. It's the act of seeing someone fully and still choosing them. And beyond romance, it's about connection, the way we give and receive energy. He reveals that the best kind of love isn't perfect or painless, it's honest. Love, he says, is a poem we co-write with time. Chapter 7, FUCKUPS, DAYMARES, Wobbly, Lost, and Lookin. This section is raw, unfiltered, and deeply introspective. McConaughey sheds his Hollywood shine and talks about mistakes, the ones that nearly cost him everything. The tone shifts from reflective to confessional. He explores addiction, arrogance, temptation, and the strange comfort of chaos. These aren't stories told for sympathy, they're shared for truth. He coins the term DAYMARES for the waking fears that haunt us, the ones we can't escape because they live in daylight. He writes about chasing illusions, about confusing freedom with recklessness, and about the painful lessons that came from trying to outrun his own shadow. But amidst the turbulence, there's redemption. He learns that we don't find peace by avoiding the dark. We find it by facing it. In one of his most honest prayers, he admits, "Forgive me, and at least give me the courage to shut the fuck up instead." It's a plea for humility in a world obsessed with noise. Through these confessions, McConaughey shows that failure is not a fall. It's a form of progress. We all get wobbly. What matters is how we walk forward anyway. Chapter 8. Faith in Doubt. Here, McConaughey steps into the sacred. He treats faith not as doctrine, but as dialogue. He speaks of wrestling with belief, questioning God, and searching for purpose in the spaces between certainty and confusion. Faith, he says, is not blind, it's brave. It takes courage to believe when the evidence isn't there. Through poetry and prayer, he expresses a spiritual maturity that accepts both trust and tension. Doubt, he argues, isn't the enemy of faith, it's its companion. Are we hoping to survive, or surviving to hope? He asks, and in that question lies his theology. Prayer, to him, is less about asking and more about aligning, finding harmony between one's will and something higher. He also expands the definition of prayer beyond religion. Prayer could be laughter, a walk in nature, art, or simply paying attention. When we pray, we realign our values, he says. We remind ourselves of what truly matters. McConaughey ends this section with a reminder that faith doesn't eliminate fear. It teaches us how to live alongside it. Chapter 9. Compassion, Forgiveness, and Reigning Grace. The tone softens here. McConaughey writes with the ease of a man who's made peace with himself. Compassion, forgiveness, and grace. 3 words that, for him, form the trinity of humanity. He uses poetry to dissect each one. Compassion as empathy in motion, forgiveness as freedom from resentment, and grace as the invisible blessing that connects us all. He shares reflections on times he held grudges, only to realize that holding on was heavier than letting go. Forgiveness, he says, isn't forgetting. It's releasing the hold that pain has on your soul. Grace, on the other hand, is divine. It can't be earned or forced. It arrives when we least deserve it. And that's what makes it powerful. Through these reflections, McConaughey turns moral philosophy into melody. He writes, "Grace reigns on us all. It's just that some of us are too busy running for cover." The idea is simple but profound. If we slow down, if we stay open, grace finds us. This chapter is the heart of the book's spirituality, the space where poetry meets prayer. Chapter 10. American Dreams Lost to Find. This section feels like a bridge between the personal and the collective. McConaughey turns his gaze outward, to America, to culture, to the soul of a nation that's searching for itself. He writes about ambition, identity, and the illusion of endless wanting. The American dream, he suggests, has become less about purpose and more about possession. Through a mixture of verse and reflection, he laments how society confuses convenience with progress. He challenges the notion that success means more money, more fame, more validation. For him, true wealth lies in integrity, in service, in staying connected to community and conscience. He urges readers to rediscover humility and hope in everyday life. But this isn't a sermon, it's an invitation. McConaughey's America isn't broken, it's just misplaced. We've lost the dream to find it again, he says, believing that renewal begins when we trade greed for gratitude. The message echoes through his words. Progress without purpose is poverty of the soul. Chapter 11. Sunrise Intentions and All-Day Appreciations. This closing chapter radiates calm and clarity. McConaughey speaks like a man who's learned to start each day with intention and end it with reflection. A sunrise intention, he explains, is a conscious choice of how to live, how to show up, how to respond, how to create. And all-day appreciation is the practice of gratitude for the ordinary miracles we often overlook. He shares how his mornings begin not with haste, but with prayer and stillness, a pause to set his compass before the day begins. By nightfall, he reflects, taking inventory of blessings and lessons alike. This rhythm of daily mindfulness keeps him grounded in a world that's constantly spinning. Through poetic imagery, McConaughey reminds us that joy is a discipline. Gratitude is not a reaction, it's a stance. And faith, love, and purpose aren't destinations. They're choices we renew each morning. The book's message crystallizes here. If we live each day with presence and close it with thanks, we've done enough. He ends with an echo of his lifelong mantra. Keep living, keep looking up, keep saying amen. Because life, as he's learned, always rhymes when you listen closely. McConaughey closes the book the way he began, with rhythm and reverence. He sees poems and prayers as two hands clasped in the same act of creation, one expressing, the other surrendering. He writes, "I write poetry because I believe life rhymes." For him, rhyme is not just sound, it's symmetry, balance, connection. His words urge us to look beyond reason, to believe and wonder, and to live with both grit and grace. Because, as McConaughey reminds us, life's a poem, and every breath is a prayer. Matthew McConaughey's Poems and Prayers isn't just a collection of verses, it's a compass for the soul. It invites us to slow down, to listen, and to live deliberately. It's a reminder that faith isn't found in perfection, but in participation, in showing up, in caring deeply, and in believing that life, no matter how chaotic, still rhymes. Just keep living. Greenlights.